Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the Kaleidoscope Cafe Podcast. Today I'm here with Charlotte, a local legend. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello.
So we're going to start off the episode by talking about a very chilling tale. Do you want to start the story?
Yes, so back in, God, it must have been year 6. We both went to the same primary school, and they recently built in a sort of, what do you call it, alley in this whole field that we had. And at the end they had this big metal spiky fence which was locked, and it basically separated our primary school from like the public to the outside, so no one could get there at all. No one ever went there at all. Like, no one ever like climbed over because you couldn't. So if you want to carry on, Oscar.
So one day we'd walked from a place called the Spiritual Garden, which was sort of a separated area, which I suppose was meant for meditation, I guess. Nobody used it for that. So we went there into this back lane of the forest. So there's a line of trees separating the main sports field and then a strip of woods, and then behind that, the public woods. So we walked up that to a metal kind of corrugated fence that had gaps in between it. And that is when we saw, how would you describe her? She was a woman with her head facing downwards. Do you want to talk a bit about when we actually saw this crazy ghostly entity?
Yeah, so we both stopped and we looked forward and we saw this girl. She wasn't like a woman. She looked kind of early 20s, late teens. She looked quite grown up. She was literally the replica of our friend. And our friend was in that day, but she was somewhere else. And it was so crazy. So she started walking. I think she started walking from this way across, and she had her head down. She was wearing exactly the same clothes as our friend wears, like on a daily basis. Exactly the same looks, exactly the same, just older. And she went into this like tree, and she just vanished. And we were both stood there like shocked to what we had seen. Like, it was insane. Like, we were in year 6 and we just saw this person, and it was insane. We were both in like shock, and we were like, did you see that? This is crazy. Like, we're not mediums at all, and to think this thing, we still remember this story literally word for word. Like, we both saw exactly the same thing exactly the same time on that day. It was insane.
Yeah. One of the things I think was the strangest about it was in our primary school, all of the girls would wear this same checkered dress, and this woman who appeared to be, maybe in her mid-20s, was wearing this exact same school uniform that was designed for children, which added, I think, to the eeriness of it, as well as the fact that we both recalled her disappearing and not actually leaving our vision in a way that we could explain. Do you want to describe how you kind of saw her disappear? Because to me, it almost was as if she walked into fog, but I don't necessarily remember it being a foggy day. I'm not quite sure. I'm quite fuzzy on the details, to be very honest. How do you remember it?
Yeah, so I kind of imagine it as kind of like either a bush or a tree. I said tree, but maybe it's more of a bush. And it was quite tall, so that's why I thought it was a tree. And keeping in mind this was about 7 years ago, so a long time ago, and I just literally remember seeing her, just thinking,
should we change her name for the story?
Yes, yeah, we should.
So you were thinking, is that Guadalupe? Could that be Guadalupe over there?
Exactly what I was thinking, and I was thinking, that is Guadalupe. I've just seen walk into this big bush or tree and disappear, and it's like insane. Yeah, that's how I remember her, just Guadalupe just walking and just wasn't it? But Guadalupe did not walk out the other side. Guadalupe sort of just vanished. But you didn't see her vanish. You saw Guadalupe just sort of walk. That's it. That's it. It's insane. And how, you said you imagined her in like fog.
Yeah, to me it was I remember her being amongst trees, but I think there was like some kind of fog around when she sort of vanished. And the way I would describe it is it's not as if she'd moved a significant distance. It was like she was there and then she just gradually faded. Like, like on Microsoft Word, when you have a color fade, it was like her silhouette just kind of disappeared. So that was the craziest part to me.
Yeah, definitely. Just insane how she could just disappear like that, and us, usually it's only one person who can see, and it's like, oh, the other one, just doesn't pay any notice, like, oh, probably too tired or something. But the fact that we both, like, I think we both turned around to each other and we were like, did you just see that? And it's just a surreal experience that you wouldn't imagine. It was one of our last days in year 6, and being so young as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy, quite scary as well for being that young.
Yeah, I remember we would then afterwards run to other kids and tell them that we'd seen a ghost, and people were saying to us, like making fun of us, saying that they'd seen monsters and stuff. So nobody took us seriously. And I think because we were at such a young age when it happened, for me, it's hard to take it seriously. I think there must be some kind of logical explanation behind it. But I do think it was like an incredibly odd event. And also it's really stuck with both of us quite a lot. But one of the things is I walk in that woods fairly frequently, and I've never really seen or experienced anything to suggest paranormal activity in that woods, in the rest of the however long, maybe decade I've lived here.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah, no one believed us. Our friends who we said at the time, we were like, we've just seen this. We've just seen Guadalupe, and they're like, this is not real. And we're like, well, yeah, it is. And, as you say, maybe it was just a one-time thing. I can't explain it really. We can't really explain. Maybe it was crazy because it looked like someone we knew.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it was a stranger, because we might think, oh, well, But the fact that our friend was in that day is just insane. It's crazy. I don't know. Yeah, maybe there is a logical explanation for it, but I don't have one yet. So like the logic of and it's maybe if we told a medium, or maybe they would think, oh, it's probably nothing. But I think it's so crazy how it was someone we knew, as you say, like we confirmed that she was on the playground and there's no way you could get to the other side, because it clearly was the other side as well, and the metal slabs between each other were wide enough apart to see through as well, so it's not like we didn't see anything. And I think that at the time, obviously we were so young, so no one believed us, but literally we're adults now, and it's insane how something, you can still remember like 7-8 years later as well. Yeah.
What do you believe it was?
I believe maybe it was her spirit. I'd like to think that.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah. I wouldn't have an explanation. Maybe her future spirit that was just there, or something on those lines. What about you, Oscar?
I do enjoy the idea that there's some crazy time distortion, and that her from the future is just taking a stroll. That's an interesting idea. I think in reality, it's just perhaps a scary coincidence that it was somebody who looked like her. I think the interesting thing was, though, is I don't remember why we were looking out through that fence. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but we had like no real reason to be looking out there through that back fence, because this was like a separated corner. This was outside of the main area where we would usually be. Do you remember what we were even like doing back there or looking for?
I think we were taking a walk and it was a long stretch of woods, and it seemed to just be us as well. I don't remember the reason why we actually stopped and looked. I can't remember why. Maybe it's a sign that we can't remember, or maybe it's a sign that we shouldn't remember. But maybe because it was just us. It was just us. There was just the two of us. Everyone else just wasn't around that part. They were either on the other side or just further down. And maybe we were meant to see her, and maybe we were meant to remember, because it's funny how we remember it so clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's insane. Maybe I more think of like the dimension thing, that something got mixed up and that it was her, but in the future, but stuck because she was wearing the same clothes that she was wearing in primary school. So I just think it's a weird coincidence, definitely.
Yeah. Have you had any other ghost experiences other than this?
I have a few. I do have one quite strange one, actually. So my room's very old, and my house is very old. So my room used to be a stable, but then it got converted into obviously a room. And I used to have a sofa bed when I moved in here. And one day, like one night, I was so tired. I think it must have been around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And I think I was probably around 13 or 14. And I was lying on this side. And I heard, so obviously the sofa bed's like that. So the sofa bed is literally like that. There was room underneath as well. So it was all just like air, and then it was the floor, and then it was, So I heard really faintly, it started off, but like horses cantering. And then it got louder and louder and louder and louder. And then it sort of went away, but it got so loud and I was so scared that my whole body just froze. I couldn't move. And I say this as like a ghost experience because I don't know how else to explain it. There wasn't music or, anything like that. There's nothing like that. And it was just me in this room. And it was just crazy because I think it was a paranormal experience. It wasn't a human being ghost, I don't think, but I think it was a paranormal experience. Hearing such a weird noise and it being so quiet, then loud, then quiet, but it got so loud, and I think I told like one of my parents the next day, and they just like didn't believe me. But I think it's just a very weird thing. Yeah.
Is it true that your house maybe used to be used as a stable or anything along those lines?
Yeah, it is. So our house was used for something. It was one of the first used for something in where we live in our county, and it's very old, and we do have new bits. It is new, but I think you can't really forget what was here. I mean, obviously it was just the stables, it wasn't anything sinister, but where our kitchen is, where it got built, used to be a well, and obviously we filled it in. But I always think, sometimes I'm just like, there's a well underneath us and maybe something tragic happened, but we'd never know because there's no signs ever, but there's some weird, yes, sounds and like that happened in my room quite often. That has happened ever since I moved in, probably about like 8 years ago. But I just no other way to I can really explain it.
Yeah, I remember once, maybe when we were about 13, I think your mum maybe had a hypothesis that it was the pipes or something along those lines. Um, what do you think about that theory?
She did. The pipes, I think she was maybe thinking of a reasonable explanation, but the pipes don't run where my room is. And I think it's very, very, very weird. I've also heard another noise that, if you have like a bumpy floor and a suitcase when you're in an airport and you run it along there. I used to have a noise like that all across my wardrobes in my room. I have quite like a line of wardrobes, as you can see, and it used to be all the time different. It would start, stop, it would go for longer, it would go for shorter, it would go louder, it would go quieter. And one time my mum was in my room and she was like, I can hear it. And I was like, I told you I'm not lying. Like, I told you I can hear it.
Mhm.
And it gives you chills, really. It makes you have goosebumps because it's like, I'm in this room all the time, but I don't think it's a bad energy. I think it's quite a good energy.
Okay, yeah. What was your other ghost experience? You said you had a couple.
I have a few from relatives, like my mum. I have one.
Mhm.
If I should go into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So she grew up in Wales and in the 70s, and she was probably about 15, 16, maybe 14. So she was skipping school one day with her friend, and they both went back to her house, and obviously it was 70s architecture, like, it was all a bit quirky but also a bit like gross at the same time.
Yeah.
And her friend went into the kitchen to make them drinks, and no one was there, it was just them two. And my mum was sitting down, and there used to be a big vinyl player, so one of the big setup ones, and it used to rest on a table or something. It was quite high up, and so she was there, and it was probably about there, and it wasn't too far away from her as well. So there used to be a china elephant on it as well. So you know how heavy china is, really
Mhm.
heavy,
Yeah.
sometimes quite hard to pick up. So she was sitting there, and her friend came in with the drinks, and I thought, okay, this is great. So the needle on it wasn't turned on or anything. The needle scratched this vinyl, this record, and they thought, oh, that's a bit weird, but it's probably nothing, like sometimes they just do that if they're switched off, they're old,
Mhm.
and it just scratched it. But it didn't scratch the record, it just made the noise. It was quite loud as well, and they carried on doing what they were doing. And this china elephant, my mum saw, rose up and came straight towards my mum, and my mum got up straight
Whoa.
away. Yeah. And the china elephant smashed, and my mum was like completely shocked that it had literally just risen and then gone straight for her. And it wasn't to her friend either, it was for her. And the house was quite old even then,
Mhm.
so we're talking about like 40 something years ago this was, so it was really old then. And my mum said that she didn't get a good energy from the house, and that maybe she thought that my mum's quite spiritual as well, so she thought maybe she wasn't welcome, that it was a sign that she wasn't welcome in the house and that she should leave. And she did leave, and she told my grandma, her mum, about this, and she said, oh, you know what your friend's like, she's making up these stories. And my mum was like, no, for the life of me, I really saw this in front of my eyes. It kind of runs in the family as well. Same with my grandma, it really runs through the families. Lots of like stuff has happened.
Mhm. That's really interesting. There's no ghost stories particularly in my family, which is a little disappointing, I guess. Um, what are your beliefs on ghosts? Why are they here? Are they here? What are they doing? What are they trying to achieve?
Personally, I think that each house has good energy and like bad energy. So bad energy will be like, they'll show major signs that they don't want you there, that you should leave, like that you're not welcome. And then good houses are, yeah, you hear a few creaks, from doors and stuff, and maybe some weird noises, but you're fine, you're welcome, you're not disrespecting it, because it's still the same land as well, isn't it? And I believe that they're here to move on. It might
Mhm.
take them years, it might take them decades, it might take them hundreds of years, but they don't realize, I feel like in their self-consciousness, they don't realize they're dead. And they're like, oh, people are moving into my house, but I'm still alive. This is really weird. Maybe they try telling us, but we can't see them. And I think we can't see them because our third eye, which I think is like here or wherever they say it is,
Yeah.
um, it's not opened until we die. Because I believe that we're all like a layers of dimensions, and it doesn't open until we die. And if we do forcefully open it now, which you can do, it's hard, but you can do it, it's dangerous because you see things that you shouldn't until you die.
Right. So say if somebody had a psychic ability, you'd put that down to their third eye being open.
I think so, yeah. And it
Right.
maybe people are born with it open, or maybe people just force it open, which you shouldn't do.
Yeah. So you shouldn't necessarily aim to open your third eye because you might see too much.
Exactly. See things that would scare you a little too much, and then you can't close it either. So
What do you think about new houses? Are there any energies in there, or is it like the land that the person was living on, or is it the actual specific house? Um, like what it would happen if you knocked down a building? What do you kind of think would happen there?
I feel like it would just stay. So I feel like it's mainly, let's say you have a new estate of houses, which they get built all the time now, and I feel like it's all on the land. It's all on the land, like they walk. I don't think it's just houses either. Maybe they walk along the street, but we can't see them at all. We only see what's in our dimension. And I think that whether it's a new house, or an old house, it could be exactly the same thing. It's just the land. That's it.
Yeah. Do you think an object could be haunted potentially?
Yes, definitely. I think that a spiritual either person or like the whole energy, you get that other one as well. That's quite dangerous. I think that they can possess an object, and I think that it's quite dangerous when that object is in your possession. So you know how people sell china and they sell all these weird things that they've had in their family. I think you should always check the background of it, because I think that so many things are haunted, and I think that it will scare you, and it's not nice. And I think that things do come with a story. Yeah,
Do you believe you can cleanse them?
I do, but I don't think it will go away. I think maybe it will put like a so sage is really good, but I think that it only does, like, it only makes it calm for a small while, whereas like, you know it won't ever go away.
Right. So you couldn't permanently make, a potentially haunted object safe forever unless you continuously cleansed it.
Maybe with the right people you could, like a priest, or
Okay.
like holy water. But I don't think one person could do it. I think it has to take multiple. And I think that if someone really believes that an object like maybe a picture frame or a kettle or a whatever, a pot, I feel
Hmm.
like, either get it out of your possession straight away, don't leave with it long, or get it, done with holy water by a priest or a vicar, whatever.
Um, where was your kind of first introduction to the idea of ghosts or feeling like a presence?
So my grandma would always tell me stories that she's about her, and obviously she's lived for a long time. She's still living for a long time, and I used to think, it's probably nothing. She's probably a bit old. I won't
Yeah.
believe her. And then we used to go to church a lot, and it's a very old area where I live, very old, and we used to go to one church all the time, every Sunday. And I think mainly in graveyards, because there's so many people, that it's sort of, you do feel uneasy. I think, yeah, probably graveyards, nothing drastic happened, but just the feeling of uneasiness, and it's not good energy, and that, I should leave, not being pushed physically by a spirit, but just feeling like really maybe sometimes nauseous and sick, like they can get inside your head and be like, nah, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna leave. I definitely think graveyards are a bit, hit and miss.
Have you ever heard of kids who will remember a past life?
Yes, I have. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you know what? I was having this exact conversation with my mum, probably about a week ago, and I was like, yeah, no, I've heard people do that on social media. A story will come up, not like a post, but on apps like TikTok or Snapchat, or and it's really crazy, because you're sort of just like, whatever, it's probably nothing. And then sometimes, something will stick with you, and you'll be like, so I heard about this boy who probably was about 8, and he said, "Oh, mum, like this was in America.
Hmm.
I'm a little boy now, but I used to be really tall and muscly, and now I'm really small, and I don't know what happened. And I think I was in a war, or I was a soldier, or something along those lines." And his mum was just like quite shocked, as you would be. And it's like how he remembers so much about details that maybe people just wouldn't carry around with them about, maybe about the Civil War or something like that. But I think it's really spooky. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know whether or not to believe them. If they have details that there's no other way they could have had, then that's interesting to me. I think if a kid said something along the lines of just that they used to be tall, I would maybe take it with a grain of salt, you know? What are your thoughts on that? Kind of remembering a past life. Would you believe a kid if they kind of said something like that to you?
I agree with you as well. Sometimes you got to take it with a pinch of salt. Um, I think that you can't believe every kid, because kids have these wide imaginations, and it's just sort of. But I feel like sometimes the facts that they remember are so oddly specific for a child to even take that kind of knowledge into their head, that you sort of wonder, like, maybe there is one or two out there that this has happened. But I think
Yeah.
that that's quite rare, and some of them have just, or even like drawings, some of them draw really sinister things, and it's like, oh, that's actually really weird.
Yeah. To bring it back to something you mentioned earlier, you were talking about how there's multi-dimensional aspects of reality, and that certain people can open themselves up to the multiverse, essentially. Do you want to go a bit deeper into that and what that actually means? Are we talking in terms of parallel universes, or is it layers of one reality? How do you kind of see that?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to get into it. I think that there are different dimensions, like different layers. Imagine it like paper. Layer one is now. We are living in the now. We can see each other. We know each other are real. We don't think anything of it. Second layer is ghosts. Third layer is other things that we don't know about yet. And I think also just sort of like, I don't know, the third eye thing, I think is really interesting, because people, I think you can see figures, statues, whatever. They may not talk to you, but maybe it's open a little bit that some people can see. But I think it's such an interesting thing, because it's you don't really hear about it that often, that many people, but I think you shouldn't force it open, because that's really bad, and it's maybe you're more likely to get possessed if you do. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but I've heard that it should not be opened. And I think it opens when we die. So I think as soon as we die, it will open, and we can see everyone that we love, and it will be really nice. And some people, I think, struggle when they die to realize they're dead, or they're still in love with their husband or wife, and they think, oh, I can't leave them. So they kind of haunt them, but not in a horrible way, like in a nice way. And I think that sometimes people can't cross over, and that's when they can be seen by people.
Okay, right. Um, do you know of simulation theory, the theory that we're living in a simulation? Um, I suppose, would you relate the idea of layers of reality to different layers of the simulation, or do you not believe in that?
I do, definitely. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I see lots of people go on about it on TikTok, like mention it, and obviously it's TikTok, so you're not going to believe them. But I think it's very interesting to open up your mind as you get older, and just think, like, is it like a stimulation, simulation, something like that?
Simulation.
Yes, that we are like in that, and it's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the sort of surgence of witches and such on TikTok? People who, um, practice spirituality on TikTok. What do you kind of see? Because I don't have TikTok. I've not really seen the conversations going on there. Do you see a lot of that?
I see people who make up stories, you know, like clout, and I'm like, oh, I wish this could be real. But I think actually about TikTok is not the actual post, it's about the comments. So go into the comments and you see people go on about what they've seen, or maybe, you know, I feel like it's more believable because you're seeing it from their profile and they're sharing it, you know, in the comments, and they get likes and they get comments under their comments. And I think that everyone has had their own experiences, and I think that it happens so often to not believe it, you know. I feel like
Yeah.
there is some truth in it. Yeah.
Do you believe in haunted hotels and things? You'll sometimes see Netflix documentaries about hotels or specific buildings that are meant to have like a particularly um, specific ghost history behind them. Do you believe in any specific buildings being haunted?
Do you know what, I think sometimes it is just there's logic, you know. There's some people that caretakers and stuff when it comes to big buildings like the Queen Mary in Los Angeles, or other things. But I think definitely if it's quite big, I kind of believe it more, because I was recently, actually today, watching a video about these people explore the Winchester House, and I think it's in America somewhere, maybe Los Angeles. But I was watching it, and this woman who lost her child at 5 weeks, so quite traumatizing for her as well. And she also lost her husband, and she died in 1920, but for 38 years she lived in this house. And she said that I think she must have wrote it in a diary or something, that she used to go into this room which everyone calls the Seance Room, and she used to talk to the spirits, and they used to tell her how to build the house. So this house has 162/4 bedrooms. It is so massive. She was building it for 38 years because she believed that when she stopped building it, she would die. Now, she
Wow.
claimed that the good spirits, um, were telling her how to build the house to keep the bad spirits away. And obviously, you know, it's seems a bit fake, and maybe it is, but I feel like there is some truth to that, you know.
Yeah. You bring up the Queen Mary. Was that a ship or was that a building?
It was a ship, and I think there was hundreds of rooms. It was massive, really old, wooded. Everything was lovely, but rooms were very sort of, it was sort of similar to the Titanic, but I think the rooms were weird because the rooms sometimes had doors to the other rooms, and it's not like you would have that now, but it wasn't too long ago either. I think yeah, I've seen a few videos and nothing crazy's happened, but I think the people, obviously, they still haunt it and they're still there.
Yeah. I believe Shane Dawson, obviously, now nobody watches him. But a while back, in the kind of the peak of his popularity, I believe he stayed there and he was talking to an employee because they kind of now use it as a tourist attraction for people. And some of the employees genuinely did believe it was haunted. So people who were spending extended periods of time there would have stories about, you know, either guests who'd said they'd been haunted or, you know, moving objects and things like that. So it is interesting that that specific ship has become so infamous. Did something happen there? Why it is alleged to have become haunted, or is it just said to be haunted because it's so old, or what's the story behind that?
People might have jumped off the top. I can't say for sure, but I feel like people may have ended their lives on that ship. I think I've heard a few like that. And obviously, yeah, as you say, Shane Dawson went there and he did talk with the employees. I think when you hear stories from the employees, I feel like it's really interesting because they're there all the time. They get paid. They don't make up these stories. Maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. But I think that most of the stuff they say can often be quite trustworthy.
Yeah. Do you, to bring it to a slightly different subject, do you believe in people who've kind of said that they've been visited by aliens? Because it's kind of along the same lines of going off word of mouth. Would you tend to believe those people?
I think I would, to an extent. So I think that, personally, I think that where we live, the United Kingdom, in Scotland, Loch Ness Monster, I guess you call that a weird mythical sea creature. I think that's 1,000% real, but I think that it's very old and that it is, can't be bothered for all these tourists holding their phones to this, want to see it. But I think that some things, I really like looking into things, not so much aliens, because I'm not too sure about them, but I feel like with the ocean, I'm terrified personally. I don't know if you like the ocean or not, but
Yeah. So you think there's stuff underwater?
yes, definitely terrified of it. And I think there's so much, like the Loch Ness Monster, that is about 227 meters deep, and that is quite big for a lake. Quite deep for a lake. And I think that it's often maybe from when dinosaurs were alive, and there was lots of creatures then when dinosaurs were alive that maybe we thought, oh, they're extinct, but maybe they're not. And I feel like the Loch Ness Monster, everyone calls it Loch Ness Monster, it's called something scientific, but that we don't know the name of, or that I don't know the name of right now. But I think that maybe people thought it was extinct, but it could actually live like 400 years, or obviously that wasn't back, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's something from then that lives quite a long time, maybe thousands of years. I don't know. You get weird things in the ocean, that's all I can say.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of cryptozoology?
No, I haven't. What's that?
So, as you were saying, there might be like dinosaurs that have never been, documented. There's basically a whole community of people who do this thing called cryptozoology, where they will try and document animals, or, as you say, like reptiles, potentially dinosaurs, creatures that are not currently recognized by the scientific community, and they will try and identify them and get them on record. So you'll have famous cases like Bigfoot, but then there's also, people who will genuinely go into, forests, maybe the Amazon, and find, types of frogs that we haven't seen before. So there is actually a community of people who do try and document those. The problem is with it is that it's not really a legitimate science, because it's so fragmented. It's just individuals documenting what they've seen, and obviously if they haven't got a picture or some solid evidence that they saw it, you can't really always believe that they necessarily have actually encountered that creature, But it's interesting that you bring it up. Obviously, there are some remnants of dinosaurs. I believe the alligator or the crocodile is one of those.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I did have a dinosaur stage as a kid. So it is interesting that we still have, it completely unrelated, but we still have the skeletons of these creatures who were so insane. Like, they were actually real. I still can't wrap my head around it, but I remember just being mystified as a kid by the fact that dinosaurs actually walked on this earth,
I think it's so crazy. We still have, exactly as you say, the skeletons, and it's just insane that you think, oh gosh, like so many decades of fashion and so many important people who are now died and dinosaurs, and it's like this all happened before we even existed. We had no idea.
Yeah. Do you believe anything like, people will say Stonehenge was potentially created by aliens, or any crazy stuff like that? Would you believe that?
I wouldn't, just because I think Vikings did it, but I think they used like wood machinery, they're some kind of machinery then, obviously nothing electronic, but I think that it was all made by the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons or whatever, I don't think that aliens were involved in that at all, but it's my opinion.
Yeah, no, same. So to bring it back to sort of, as we were talking about ghosts and energies, when did you kind of start being spiritual or become, tuned into that side of life?
I think probably when I watched obviously The Woman in Black when I was about 9, and I sort of forgot about it for a few years, but it did open up my eye a little bit. I don't think about it a lot, like all the time, but I think that, I'll watch something, or I like watching those ghost videos because I just think it's a very interesting thing. I feel like probably maybe around 16, 17, maybe, that I was very interested, or maybe even 15. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, I don't really believe in aliens as such. I don't think there are these, but I think there are probably living creatures or insects, but I don't really believe in aliens, and I don't know if UFOs were really sighted. I don't really know about that, but I think that ghosts and stuff, yeah, I like to look into it because I think it's just such an interesting thing, and it's a really good conversation to have with someone like we're having now about it, because there's so many, you know, different opinions that people have, and some people are non-believers and some people are, and people have stories, and it's just, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think personally, I don't necessarily believe in ghosts now, but extraterrestrials, I'm sort of like they could be out there somewhere, you know. And the thing is, it could just be like a simple, like, or like single cell organism or something like that, like bacteria, basically. That might be the only alien life out there, but it's not impossible that there's inhabitants to other planets in the entire universe. I think it's probably unlikely that we're completely alone in the universe.
Exactly, I agree. I think that there's definitely something, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like maybe I can just imagine a weird insect that had mutated or something like that on Mars. But I don't think that there's, I don't know, maybe there is, you know, I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, do you have any spiritual practices?
I don't really. I mean, I sage my house. I sage my sister's room, my sister's old room. She no longer lives in it now, but I think that I feel a bit uneasy in there. I don't know. It's very, I don't like it in there as such. I don't go in there. I'm on the ground floor, so I'm very happy about that. But I just think that I don't really practice myself, and I don't think I have a word. But I'd go to people who do. You know, I think that I just wouldn't personally play with it. But yeah, do you?
I don't particularly. Do you believe in psychics or people who are mediums?
Yeah, I do. I think my grandma once got told by a medium that she had a gift, and she never found out what it was, and she never saw the woman since. She died literally after she saw her, which is weird. But
Yeah.
I think that there definitely are people who can talk to the dead, and I think that that's really interesting, and that they can see them, and some of them can just hear them, and I think it's really interesting. Yeah, maybe, yeah, there are people like that.
Do you believe in Ouija boards?
I think they're a terrible idea. I think that they can, I know, I think that they can work, but I think they're a terrible idea, and I don't think that we should play with stuff like that. It's like opening the third eye. It's very bad for you. You shouldn't do that. You know, there's a reason in horror movies why someone always dies, or multiple people always die. You know, I think it's a very bad idea.
Yeah. I heard a story from a friend in high school that it was a story of a friend, really. So it was his mum who had heard this story from a woman at their local church who had basically said that she'd seen somebody get possessed by a demon and dragged across the floor. And I think she thought it was related because this person had tried to do a Ouija board. Obviously, that's a very, very unreliable source, but it is anecdotally something you occasionally hear about. Do you believe in people can get possessed by demons or anything like that?
That's really interesting that, you know, yeah, like people who know people who know people hear about these things. I do have a story. My Someone on my mum's side, I think he was an uncle to someone. He was in uni in Cardiff, and this must have been, God, I don't know if it was maybe 19th century, probably it was. I think it was probably the 60s or 50s. Oh, actually, I think maybe it was 60s. And he apparently got possessed after they did something like that in their uni halls. And I just think it's a terrible idea. You know, he wasn't very well after that. And I just think that it's such a terrible thing to play with. You know, if anyone says to you, oh, let's do a Ouija board, it's like, no, let's not, because let's go to church instead. That's a much better idea than doing a Ouija board.
Have you ever heard of people who will hunt ghosts professionally?
I have, yeah. I feel like the ghosts won't show as much of them though, because they're looking for it. And I think when, you know, on YouTube videos, you don't really see too much, because I feel like the ghosts are just like, oh, look, I'm just trying to haunt the hallways of this big house or this ship, and you're in my way, and I'm not going to show you anything, because that's what they want, and that's what, you know. And I think like we should let them some rest and be at
Yeah.
peace. I think sometimes it's a bit disrespectful because I'm like, oh, I know you don't mean it in a horrible way, but I feel like, you know, they're just trying to haunt the hallways, so leave them be.
Yeah. I also think they'll sometimes pull out like different pieces of technology and say that the tech is detecting ghosts, but they'll never explain like the science behind it. So it seems pretty, yeah, fraudulent as far as I'm concerned. Have you ever seen that BuzzFeed Unsolved video? I remember finding this so creepy. They were in, I believe it was an abandoned, I believe it was like a psychiatric ward, um, or some part of a mental institution that was like now disused. And they had heard a story that there was a boy, like a young boy, who would be on one of the floors, and they rolled a ball down the hallway and something like rolled it back to them. I've always found that pretty horrifying. The moving objects things. Do you think a ghost could actually move a physical object, or because they're living in a different side of like the dimension of reality, would they not be able to interact with physical material objects?
Gosh, that is interesting. I do like BuzzFeed Unsolved, but I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't know, really. I don't think so. I think that they can't touch anything that's in our dimension, so I don't really think so. I think maybe, or maybe with the elephant thing, maybe they're
Hmm.
doing it by mind control, possibly, but I don't really think that, you know, they can move a physical object. But that's just what I think personally.
Are any of your short stories public at the minute, or are you planning to make any of them public?
I would like to, probably in the next couple of years when I go to university, I'd like to make them public. And I'd like people to maybe write, you know, blog posts underneath or comment underneath, you know, I'll put it on a
Yeah,
platform that people are able. But I love writing short stories about anything. You know, it's mainly queer stuff, I can't lie, but I think that it's a really nice way to like flourish and just sort of get out my thoughts there. And obviously I share it with you a lot, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh, anyone who wants to, I'll send it by email. And people say to me now, like, you still send things by email, and I think it's one of the most important things ever. I think
yeah.
emails are still very much in and now, yeah.
Yeah, I have that with physical letters. I quite like to write physical letters still, or if obviously I don't write stories, but writing lyrics is quite nice to actually put pen to paper in reality now, I think. Do you type your stories or do you write them?
I think that your EP and
Oh,
your lyrics are beautiful. I think
thank
they're
you.
wonderful. I do I do type them.
Yeah,
I often put music. I actually listen to either like piano or like quite like soothing bands like Cigarettes After Sex, and I listen to them because I think that they're so that it just flows through my fingers. Whatever my worry is, I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna you know, listen to that and just type it, because, you know, sometimes I do like say, but also I'll mess up, so I'll get bored of saying it to my laptop and it won't just like automatically write. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting how music can affect your mindset like that. I remember when I used to take physics, I would listen to classical music and suddenly I would just be doing like I would get so immersed in the equations I was doing so much more than usual. So it is interesting how music can, even just as a background tool, affect how you are like working. Yeah, I've experienced
Yeah,
that a bit. Yeah,
definitely.
I don't
Definitely. I
tend to
think,
listen to music when I'm writing lyrics, which is strange because you would think like you should listen to the song that you're putting the lyrics to, but I tend to do them totally separately and then try and make them work together afterwards. I don't know. Um, but yeah, what about films? Are you planning on releasing any short films anytime soon or anything in the works?
well, I do think that Elton John did that, as I know. I knew he did that. And I think, yeah, I think maybe it works better when you don't have any music. But do you know what? I would really like to release the short film I did this year. I think next year I'm making it a lot more romantic and queer, because that's a lot of the movies I like are like that. Um, I would really like to release the film called Isolation that I made with two other people, but it was obviously for school, for college, but I would like to. It is on my YouTube channel, but I haven't made it. Actually, no, I think it is public. Actually, no, I'm
Okay.
completely wrong. I think it actually is public. but I think I could maybe promote it more if I wanted to. I worked really hard on that, and I do love a slasher. I love Halloween and all those films. So yeah, definitely I'd like to want to make more movies, but also different genres as well. So yeah.
Yeah, do you think you'd ever make a horror film?
I'd love to. I'd love to make a horror film. I would. I'd love to. But I think next year my kind of aim is romantic queer love. So it's very different. They differentiate a lot. Yeah. What about you with songs?
Songs. I've vaguely started a couple, but I think it'll probably be a couple of months until anything real happens with those, or I take them into the studio because they are very far from complete at the minute. And I like to, I don't know, it's strange because you never really feel a piece of art is like finished, but I like to feel that to some extent that I've rounded it off and I've got it to like a standard I'm happy with, you know? So yeah, maybe in the next few months there'll be some new music, but I can't promise that there will be because obviously things are going to get pretty hectic in September.
Yeah, definitely. Of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, we've been going for an over an hour. Oh my God, let me restart that sentence. We've been going for over an hour. Should we round off the podcast? Do
Yeah,
you want to
sure.
let people know where they can find you on social media?
Oh, yes. Find me at Sparkly Luna. Sparkly is spelled wrong. You can work it out. Sparkly Luna on Instagram, and hopefully I will announce on there maybe in the next year or even a few months about any short stories. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very
perfect.
much for having me on here.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Absolutely, no problem.